Hello, my name is Donald Davis. When I was about 8 years old, and my little brother was about 6 years old, it was about this time of year. When one day we got home from school, my mother brought in the mail, and in the mail that day, there was this catalog that had Christmas toys in it. She made a bad mistake. Instead of hiding that catalog or instead of getting rid of it, she gave it to us. And she said, "Boys, look at this nice catalog. Why don't you look at it? And if there's anything in there you would like to ask Santa Claus for Christmas, turn the corner of the page down and give it back to me." 5 minutes. We had every page in the book turned down. We didn't care what it was. We didn't care who it was for. We didn't care what you did with it. We wanted everything. My little brother Joe even turned down the pages that had dolls on them. I said, "Joe, you want dolls?" He said, "Yeah, we can see what's inside of them." Well, we gave that catalog back to our mother, and when she saw what we had done, it sounded like she started barking. Yeah, she was going, "No, no, 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 you can't do this." I thought, we just did it. She said, "You have to start all over and pick one toy to ask Santa Claus for." Oh no, not just one toy, no. Well, we decided if we only got to pick one toy each, we were going to find the toys that had the largest number of parts and pieces. Now, we couldn't ask for Legos. They hadn't been invented yet. I knew not to ask for a jigsaw puzzle because one time I got a jigsaw puzzle for my birthday, and while I was trying to find the little flat edge pieces to make the border out of, my brother Joe ate 3 pieces right out of the middle of it. They did have a toy called Tinker Toys, but that had sharp sticks in it. I thought, ooh, we can't get that. My brother poked those in my ears and in my eyes. I tore that page out so he wouldn't even know about those. But finally we found what we were looking for. Finally we found it. It was called Lincoln Logs. Yep, those little brown wooden logs. About that long, about that long, about that long. Little notches in the end so you can make log houses out of them. Little blue-green boards to make the roof out of. Little red chimneys to go on the top. We read that a large set of Lincoln Logs had 128 pieces. So we thought if we can each get a set, then we can put them together and go back to school after Christmas and tell all our friends Santa Claus brought us 256 Christmas presents. So every time we saw Santa Claus, we would ask for the Lincoln Logs. One day we went to town and we went to Belk's store, and Santa Claus was back there in the ladies' department. As soon as I saw him, I ran to get in line. As soon as my little brother Joe saw him, my brother Joe went, "No!" and ran the other way and hid up under an old lady's dress. And we did not even know the old lady. You want to know why he did that? Well, it started 2 years before, when we had gone to see Santa Claus on a slow day. When we got there, there were no other kids waiting in line, and Santa Claus was in no hurry. I got up in his lap, he got finished with me, then he picked up my little brother, and he held him and talked to him. And he held him and talked to him. And he held him and talked to him. And all of a sudden, I could see my little brother's legs going. I knew what that meant. Now, Santa Claus is supposed to know everything in the world, right? But he didn't know about that. He kept holding my brother till all of a sudden he threw my brother about halfway across Belk's store. But it was too late. They were both wet and dripping all the way down after that. Well, my brother Joe wasn't going to take a chance on wetting Santa Claus again, so he hid and I had to do all the talking. Finally, it was my turn. I got up in his lap. He said, "Ho, ho, ho. What's your name, little boy?" "I'm Donald Davis. That's my little brother Joe over there where that lady looks like she's got 4 legs. You remember him from when he was 4 years old, don't you?" Ho, ho, ho. What do you want for Christmas, little boy? I want some Lincoln Logs, and he wants some Lincoln Logs too. Ho, ho, ho. Lincoln Logs coming up. I got down out of his lap. My mother gathered up my little brother. We went straight out the front of Belk's store. We went straight across the street, and we went into Turner's store. Santa Claus was fast. He beat us over there. I thought, how'd you do that? We just left you right over there. How'd you get over here before we did? You're too big and fat to run that fast. How'd you do that? But I knew I had to talk to him again because I'd noticed Santa Claus has a very small memory. I got in line while my little brother played sliding board on those little stools they fit shoes with. Finally, it was my turn. I got up in his lap, and he looked at me and said, ho, 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 what's your name? I thought I told you not 10 minutes ago, right over there. If you can't remember something 10 minutes, write it down. Give yourself a pencil for Christmas. Give yourself a paper, write it down. If you can't remember what my name is, how are you going to remember what I want? And I was right, because the next thing he said was, what do you want for Christmas, little boy? I knew it. You are getting entirely too old for this job. I bet I talked to him 50 times that year before finally, no matter where we were, he knew who I was. Well, finally Christmas came. Early that morning, my brother Joe got up and we went in the living room and we had 2 big sets of Lincoln Logs, one for him, one for me. They came in these tall cardboard canisters that had screw-on lids on the top. We took off the lids and we dumped them out in the floor. We mixed both sets up together, and with both sets mixed together, we made a little house and a little barn. We built a little fence around all of it. We set a new family record. We played over 20 minutes without fighting about anything. Now, my mother's family all gathered up from everywhere for Christmas at our house and at my grandmother's house. And that year, staying at our house was my Uncle Jeep and my Aunt Betty, who lived right near Tampa, Florida. And when they came from Florida, my Uncle Jeep brought to my daddy what he thought was a very special Christmas present. He brought my daddy a big box of 50 Tampa Nugget cigars. Well, in a little while, we'd had breakfast and we'd opened all the presents, and Joe and I were back in there playing with our Lincoln Logs when my daddy came in to see kind of what we were doing, and he was smoking the first one of those cigars. My little brother looked up at him and said, "Look, Daddy's smoking a Lincoln Log." And you know, that's what it looked like. My dad even took the cigar out of his mouth. He picked up one of the Lincoln Logs from the floor. He put it in his mouth, and he started marching around the room like he was smoking the Lincoln Log. He was going, puff, 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 puff. You leave these Lincoln Logs in the floor, and I'll smoke every one of them. Ha, ha, ha. Well, finally, he went on and left us alone. And then all the relatives came. They ate everything. Our family could have lived 2 months off of what was eaten that day. They ate so much, they couldn't get in the cars to leave until everybody took a nap at our house. And in no time, everybody was asleep, snoring everywhere, except me and my brother Joe. We went back to our Lincoln Logs. We decided what we were going to do was we were going to put both sets together, and then we were going to see if we could build one gigantic log house using 256 Lincoln Logs and come out exactly even at the end. We made a good start, but we started too big, and we ran out of Lincoln Logs. And then my little brother said, "I know where we can get some more." And we went sneaking in my mom and daddy's bedroom right beside where they were asleep. We got my daddy's entire box of new Christmas cigars. We took them back in our room. We dumped them out in the floor. We unwrapped every one of them. They smelled very interesting. They had little red and gold paper bands around them. We took all those little bands off and made little rings out of them. And then we took those cigars and we made little zigzag cigar rail fences. We made little cigar pig pens, to this way, to this way, to this way. We even then got some toothpicks and we stuck them in the cigars so the cigars would stand up like a little fort around everything we made out of the other Lincoln logs. We had a great time. And then all of a sudden, a question came creeping up in the back of my mind. I wonder why Daddy likes to smoke cigars. He likes to do it, so they must be good. I wonder what it's like to smoke a cigar. You know, I could try one. But wait, why should I try one when I have a perfectly good little brother right here? I said, Joe, how would you like to learn to smoke a cigar like Daddy does? He said, do you know how? I said, sure, I do it all the time. And we took one of those cigars and a little pack of matches, and we went out the back door of our house. It was a warm day that Christmas day. We were looking for a good hiding place. Back in the corner of our backyard, there was a little garage. The roof on it was a tin roof, and the roof was almost flat. And my brother and I already knew how you could climb the pasture fence and get up on that roof. And if you got near the middle, nobody could see you up there. It was a good place. So we climbed up on the roof of the garage, and I got all ready. I said, now I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to show you how to do everything. I said, take the cigar and put it in your mouth. Not all of it, just the end of it. He got the cigar in his mouth, and I said, now, I'm going to strike a match, and then you close your eyes. And when I say go, you pretend you're drinking a milkshake. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, when I say go, you go, He said, how much do I do that? I said, well, when you get good at it like Daddy is, you can stop and rest a little bit. But today you're just learning, so don't stop. Don't stop. For about the next 20 minutes, every breath that he took came in through the cigar. And you know, as that cigar began to get shorter, my little brother's color changed. He began to turn green. He looked kind of like some old boiled cabbage that should have been thrown out a few days ago. And then all of a sudden, in the same moment, he dropped the cigar and he passed out, whong, right there on top of the garage. I tried to talk to him. He couldn't hear me. I talked straight in his ears. He couldn't hear me. I thought, is he dead? Is he dead? But when I looked at his eyes, I discovered he wasn't dead because his eyes were going round and round and round and round and round. I thought, it's time to leave you. And I left him passed out on top of the garage while I climbed down to sneak back in the house. I got right to the back door when I met my mama. She said, oh, there you are. I was just looking for you. Me. You're the only person I see out here. I guess I must be talking to you. Me. Stop acting like that. Where's your brother? Who? Your brother. What's his name? There were no more questions because right then we heard a big noise on top of the garage. Something went, oh, bam, bam. He came falling off the garage, down through the privet bushes, rolling out on the ground. And before he stopped rolling, he was on his feet, running toward the house. I have never in my life to this day seen anybody run that fast. And as soon as I saw him, I thought, you know, he's going to need something to eat. Because you know what? All the food he had eaten since about Thanksgiving, it was coming back out again where you could look at it. It was about one meal to every 3 steps. And you know, he was running so fast, when he got sick, it didn't hit the ground. He just ran into it. It went all the way down the front of him. My mother got tears in her eyes. She says, oh, he's going to try to come in the house. Now, we had a little bathroom that had been made by closing in part of the back porch. And there was a door that went from the porch straight into the bathroom. That was a fine thing that day. My mother ran up there. She opened that door and stood back. Here came my brother. By the time he hit the porch, he was slipping and sliding all over the place. He went flying in the bathroom. My mother went in there behind him. She picked him up by his clothes, and she put him in the bathtub. She turned on the water, and she sprayed him off. And then he'd get sick. And then she'd spray him off. And then he'd get sick. And then I thought, I hope he lives. But I truthfully did not care if he could never talk again. I had an idea what he was going to talk about, and I didn't want her to hear it. Well, he got better, and he started telling our mama the entire story of the day. They were still in the bathroom. He was sitting on the side of the bathtub. She was sitting on the toilet with the lid down. And I was out in the hall. I was trying to listen to what was going on in there because I needed to know. I came crawling up and I looked around the door and I could see my brother. And I could see the back of my mother's head because she was looking at him. I couldn't see her face. But you know, I didn't need to see her face because by that time steam was coming up off the top of her head. She heard me, and all of a sudden she looked around, and when she looked to me, her blue eyes were not blue anymore. They were red, and they came out like, whoa, and I thought, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. Now, you would think my mother was going to come after me right at that moment. But no, she didn't. I think she just lost her mind. And she started walking through the house like she was in a daze. She walked out the door onto the back porch. She walked down in the yard. I looked at my brother and I said, is Mama running away? I was scared to look, but he was watching. He said, no, she's not running away. She's out there talking to the big maple tree. Oh. I said, is she touching it? He said, she's got a hold of it. I said, is she breaking something off of it? He said, yes, she just did. I said, is it a switch? He said, no, it's a whole big limb. Ah! Well, the punishment started. My mother started spanking me with that switch. This was a long time ago. You know, I did not get grounded. I did not get put in timeout. I did not get a talk. No, I got a flat-out free-range whipping. But you know, my mama would grab me by the arm, and I would dance and dance and jump and dance and dance and jump and dance. And pretty soon she'd give up because she actually was missing me and hitting herself about half the time. I was squalling my head off. But you know, every time I took a breath so I could squall some more, there was a sound louder than the sound I was making. It was my little brother Joe laughing his head off. I thought, I guess he didn't die, because you're not dead if you're screaming like that. Well, when it was all over, we went back to the Lincoln Logs. You know what? They were gone. My mother told us that after what they had been through that day, the Lincoln Logs were tired and they needed to rest. And we didn't get those Lincoln Logs back until after Easter. You think we got to keep the cigars? Actually, the story has a good ending. You see, that's the day my daddy quit smoking. Because he said in our whole family, my little brother had smoked enough for everybody. Now, Christmas is a wonderful story time because, stories are about trouble. And don't we really have a lot of trouble at holiday times? We sure do. Let me tell you another Christmas story. It's about my daddy and about my mama. When my parents got married, well, all through their lives, my dad was almost 20 years older than my mother. And it was so much fun for us growing up to watch the way they related to each other. He loved her so much, and he was so much older than she was. There were two special hobbies that he had. One of his hobbies was called spoiling our mama. And I learned a whole lot from watching all the different ways he would spoil her. But he had another hobby. His other hobby was called annoying our mama. And he was so good that sometimes he could manage to spoil her and annoy her at exactly the same time. One of our favorite times of the year when we were growing up, one of our favorite times was Christmas, not just because of what we got, not just because of what we were celebrating, but because that's the time of year when we got to see what did Daddy get Mama for Christmas this year. How did he manage to spoil her this time? I think the first time I remember doing that, I was about 7 years old. And on that Christmas morning, my daddy handed my mother a present from him. It was a long, flat box. She opened it up. Oh my goodness, you could not believe what he had done. My mother had gotten from my daddy this beautiful matched set of 7 little yellow handle screwdrivers. Oh, it was beautiful. There was even a little rack that you mounted on the wall in the kitchen, and those little screwdrivers were right over there near the sink. So anytime she needed one, there was a screwdriver right there just to fit the job. Now, wasn't he good for her? Would you know that she one year got the best chainsaw anybody had in our whole family? All the men even were jealous. It was just amazing. And one year, she was the first person of all of her sisters to get for Christmas her own weed eater. Wasn't he good to her? But the year my daddy outdid himself totally was the year when I was 11 years old. That year, it was a big box. It was long, it was wide, it was even deep. And when she opened that, she screamed, "You got it! You got it!" As she picked it up and it unfolded as she lifted it up out of the box. He had gotten her this beautiful, bright red wool overcoat. Oh, she put it on and she hugged him and she kissed him and she says, "Oh, Joe, this is beautiful. This is the most beautiful present I have ever gotten in my whole life. How did you know I wanted this?" Well, I knew how he knew, and I was only 11 years old. He had watched her try it on 50 times at Turner's store. If he hadn't figured it out by now, he was dumb. Well, he said, "Well, Lucille, did I manage to get the right size?" And you could see her kind of going, And even an 11-year-old boy could tell he should have gotten 1 or maybe 2 sizes larger. It was a little too tight for her. But she was so flattered because he had picked the little one, she never said a word about it. We finished opening all our presents, and then we had our breakfast there on Christmas morning. And pretty soon this year, instead of the relatives coming to our house, this year we're all gathering up at my Aunt Eddie's house. So now it was time for us to load the family presents in the car, to put the food we were taking in the car. Now, you know what the food we were taking. I know you do. One time, one of our boys asked his mama, he said, "Mama, can you even make deviled eggs when you're not going anywhere?" Yep. It was that big Tupperware container that had little scoops all around the edges for all the deviled eggs to go in it, and in the middle, a congealed salad, orange jello with grated carrots in it. Well, we got in our car and we drove out to my Aunt Eddie's house. We pulled up in the yard with all the other cars. Most people were already there ahead of us. And my brother and my daddy got the presents, and they carried them in. And I went around to the trunk of the car to help my mother carry in the food. Besides the deviled eggs and the jello, she had made one of her wonderful coconut cakes. And all of a sudden, while we were getting in the trunk of the car, I said, "Mama, Mama, Mama, the tags are still on your new coat. They're on each side of it. Cardboard tags hanging on little strings." And my mother stuffed those tags in the pockets, and she just said, "Shh, shh, shh. Son, this one is too little for me. I just squeezed into it today to make your daddy happy because he wouldn't know the difference. I left the tags on it so I could take it back up there to Belk's on Monday and swap it for the right size. Either there or over at Turner's. I know they've got them both places." Well, we get that food and we headed up to the door, and right there at the door, there was my Aunt Eddie. Now, my Aunt Eddie was the second oldest child in my mother's family. She was the oldest. There were then 7 little sisters and 2 little brothers. And my Aunt Eddie and my mother were only 10 months apart in age. They, in fact, had gone through school in the same grade together because they weren't far enough apart to be in 2 different grades the way their birthdays fell. A lot of people thought they were twins. They even dressed alike a lot, and they looked almost exactly alike, except that my Aunt Eddie was about a full or maybe 2 sizes smaller than my mama. Well, as soon as Aunt Eddie saw my mother's new coat, she said, "You got it, you got it." See, they had both been trying on those red coats. They both wanted one. And my mama says, I did. Did you get one too?" And Aunt Eddie says, "Oh, we've been working so hard to get ready for everybody to come out here. We haven't even opened a single present. Besides, you know that David Boyd," her husband, my Uncle David, "you know David Boyd would never get something this nice for me." My mother said, "Well, I got one, but Joe got it too little for me. I bet it'll just fit you. Why don't you try it on?" And my Aunt Eddie tried on my mama's coat, and sure enough, it fit her perfectly. She just about cried. She just knew she'd never get one. Well, after that, we went on in the house. Aunt Eddie took the food in the kitchen. We took our coats off, and we put them in that room that at architecture school they teach you to design, for coats. We put them on the bed in the front bedroom, and then we all went into the kitchen to enter into a long semester of eating. Now, let me tell you who was in there. My granddaddy and my grandmother. My mother, the 7 girls in that family, and the 7 men whom they had married. My Uncle Spencer, her oldest little brother, and his wife. My Uncle Steve, her little brother, who was just not much older than I was. What eventually became a bunch of 30 cousins. Oh my goodness, it was an eating machine. Well, every time that family got together, some of those 7 guys who had married those 7 girls would play a trick on one of the women they had married. We always were watching and waiting to see, what's the trick going to be this year? I remember one year, it was the year my Aunt Nancy had her teeth pulled. She had very terrible teeth with bad dental care, and she had her teeth pulled, and she was fitted by wonderful, beautiful false teeth. She'd never looked so beautiful. Aunt Mary talked all the time. She never talked. She talked in her sleep even. And that year she opened the present, and out of it came these little wind-up teeth that went da 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 da. Everybody said, look, 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 look. These are the ones you were supposed to get. They're the only ones that keep up with your mouth. And everybody laughed. You never knew what was coming. Well, about halfway through the meal, my Uncle David, Aunt Eddie's husband, he went sneaking out of the kitchen. My Uncle Ralph, Aunt Mary Gray's husband, he went sneaking out of the kitchen. Nobody saw them leave. They went up in that front bedroom. They got my mother's new coat. They got a big box and put her coat in that box, and they wrapped it up as a Christmas present from Uncle David to Aunt Eddie, and they put it under the Christmas tree. Pretty soon it was time to stop eating and open presents. In no time, paper was flying everywhere. Ribbon was flying everywhere. There were cousin presents and aunt and uncle presents and grandparent presents. And all of a sudden, somebody handed Eddie this big old box and says, "Look, Eddie, here's one to you from David. Open it up so we can see." And she opened that present, and she and my mother both screamed, "You got one too! I got one too!" She put that coat on. Oh my goodness, did it ever fit her perfectly? She went dancing around that room, and then all of a sudden she ran over and she grabbed Uncle David around the neck and started crying and kissing him. "Oh, David, boo-hoo-hoo. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life, boo-hoo-hoo. Oh, thank you so much, so cute, so kiss, 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 kiss." You should have seen the look on his face. He looked like a person who had stepped in a hole that was deeper than he knew it was going to be when he stepped in it. Well, pretty soon it was time for us to go home. And we went in the front room to get our coats, and one of them wasn't there. Now, my mother was the oldest of all those sisters, and she had negotiated most of their marriages. And it took her about 10 seconds to figure out both what had happened and what she was going to do about it. She came out of that bedroom acting like she was mad as a hornet. She said, David Boyd, you have left the door standing open because it was a warm day. You've left the windows wide open. You've left your house open to the world, and some ugly member of the roving element has come into your house and stolen my coat that Joe gave me for Christmas. David says, "Oh, no. It was a trick. Ralph and I pulled it. It's a trick. Nobody stole. Eddie's wearing it." My mother looked at her sister Eddie and said, "Eddie and I are nowhere near the same size. Look how that coat fits her perfectly. I could not even squeeze into it. And look how she has thanked you and loved you and appreciated you for giving her something like that. Now you stop teasing her." And we left and went home. When we walked in the door of our house, the telephone was ringing. My mother said, "I think it worked." And when she answered the telephone, it was my Aunt Eddie. She was talking with such excitement we could hear her all over the room, even though my mother was holding the phone. She said to my mother, "Oh, I cannot believe David got me this coat for Christmas. It's the most beautiful thing he's ever gotten me. I can't believe he got it, and he even got the right size." But then she went on and she said, "But he is so upset because someone came in our house, Lucille, and stole your coat. He was so upset he couldn't even call you. He asked me if I would call you and ask you if you had any idea where he could buy you another one." And I still remember going with a whole lot of the family on Monday of that next week up to Turner's store to watch my Uncle David in 1955 shell out $41 to buy my mother the red coat that fit just right. After that, there were never any more tricks played by those men who had married those sisters. And the next year, when my mother opened the present from my daddy, and it was what for years she called her silver bullet Electrolux vacuum cleaner, she looked at my daddy and said, "Joe, how did you know to get me this?" He says, "It was easy, Lucille. Eddie's already got one." Ah, Christmas stories. They just go on and on. And I hope maybe that my Christmas stories will remind you of some family stories that happened through the years in your own family. Let me finish up with one more little story about Christmas. It was the year when I was 9 years old and my brother Joe was 8 years old. But this time we had figured out something very important. Remember those Lincoln Logs? We had realized that if we would both get the same thing for Christmas, we wouldn't have to fight over who got the best stuff. We could start playing with it right away. And so this year, we both wanted the same thing. But what we wanted this year was the latest, most popular toy. We wanted red scooters. Now, these were not those little razor kinds of scooters. No, no, no. These were big, heavy, stamped out of steel, made in the USA scooters. They had a solid rubber wheel on the front and the back. They had a little platform you put one foot on while you hold on to the handlebar in front and you push with the other foot till you really get going. There was even a little tiny brake pedal in the back. Whoever made those scooters didn't understand we didn't have enough pavement in North Carolina mountains to ever go fast enough to need to put on a brake. And again, like usual, every time we went to see Santa Claus, we would ask for actually, my little brother would hide, and I would ask for red scooters for both of us. We did that over and over and over again. Well, that year, school got out about Wednesday, and then Christmas came on the weekend. Our mother taught second grade at Hazelwood School, and so when school got out on that last day, we couldn't leave school yet. We had to wait until she took down all the Christmas decorations, everything in her room that looked like a holiday, till she got everything packed away, till she got all the evidence of Christmas, all the evidence that there was a holiday in the world, all put away, so when everybody came back to school on the day after New Year's, then Christmas would be over and forgotten, and it'd be time to have school again. So even with our help, by the time that was totally done, it was almost 5 o'clock before we left school. And there in the mountains at Christmas time, without daylight saving time, at 5 o'clock it was almost getting dark. My mother said, "Oh boys, let's not go straight home. If we go straight home, we're going to have to turn around in no time, come back and pick up your dad at the bank when he gets off work. Let's just stop up in town, and then we can shop a little bit, and then he'll just come and find us because we'll park the car right in front of the bank, and then we'll go all home together." I thought, shop a little bit, huh? You mean look in windows at things we're not going to be able to have. I know that's what we're going to do. Well, that's indeed what we did. And pretty soon, here came our dad. He had seen the car. He came walking right up the street. And there we were. And we all got in the car, and we all headed home. Now, it was pretty much dark by now. And while we were headed toward home, my mother said, "Joe, you know, it's so late, it's after dark, and I haven't even thought about, pardon me, I haven't even thought about what I'm going to fix for supper yet. Do you think it would be okay if we stopped at Charlie's Drive-In and ate supper tonight instead of cooking so late?" My dad said, "Well, that'd be a great idea. But you know, I've got to do the treasurer's report for the Lions Club when we get home. So why don't we pull in and get curb service, and then we'll order our food, and then we'll just take it home and eat it, and I can do that treasurer's report at the same time." So we pulled in on the curb service side. We tooted the horn. Wolf Woodard came out and waited on us. He was the curb hop. We ordered 4 Charlie burgers, 4 of their special big old cheeseburgers. We ordered 4 orders of French fries, and a real treat, 4 Coca-Colas. In no time, the food came back out. Here it was, the Charlie burgers and the French fries in a big paper bag. It was kind of greasy looking from those wonderful hot French fries. The bag was nice and warm. And the Coca-Colas in bottles, you know, those green glass bottles, not open. We'd open them at home. He had them stuck here, you know, between his fingers. He was carrying them like that. And he handed the bag and he handed the Coca-Colas to my daddy. And my daddy said, "Well, Wolf, how much is it?" Now, remember those old, thick, green glass Coca-Cola bottles that were refillable? And you could gather them up along by the roadside, or you could save them, and you could take them to the store and get 2 cents each for them. Well, you also had to pay 2 cents deposit when you bought Coca-Colas like that. So Wolf said to my daddy, "Well, Joe, do you have any empty bottles to swap?" Because, see, if we had 4 empty Coca-Cola bottles, that food bill was going to be 8 cents less. We always had bottles. I knew where they were. You could hear them every time we went around the curve in that car, in the trunk of the car. And I was a helpful child, so I didn't ask any questions. I just jumped out the door, headed around to the trunk to get the bottles. You didn't have to have a key to open the trunk of that old Plymouth. It just had a sort of a T-shaped handle there. I turned that handle, opened that trunk lid. There was 2 red scooters. Slam! No bottles! My daddy paid the bill and didn't even wait to get his change back. We went home. It was quiet till Christmas. Early Christmas morning, my little brother Joe and I got up. We headed into the living room. I let him go first because I didn't want to go in there. By the time he was in there, he was yelling, "Come on in here. You're not going to believe what's in here." I thought, I think I am. But I went in the living room, and do you know what? Santa Claus had brought my little brother a huge wind-up train set. You wound it up, it went around the track and around the track about a dozen times before you had to wind it up again. And Santa Claus had brought me in its own little maple dovetail box this beautiful little tool set. It had 3 screwdrivers, 2 flat blade and a Phillips head. It had a pair of pliers. It had a brace and bit with 3 little bits. It had a ball peen hammer and a claw hammer. It had a little saw with a pointed nose. There wasn't any wood to try it out on, so I set up the card table and cut a big hole in the top of it. It was wonderful. My parents got up. We had breakfast. We had a great time. And then my daddy said, "Boys, did you get everything you wanted for Christmas?" I said, "Yes, we got stuff we hadn't even thought about." He said, "Well, I'm glad. Come over here and sit down. Let me talk to you just for a minute." He sat down in his big easy chair. He had wide arms. My brother got on the arm on one side. I got on the other side. And he said, "Well, boys, let's talk just a minute." He said, "You know, back before Christmas, your mama and I kept hearing you talk about something called red scooters. We just didn't know what that was. Till one day we were up in town and we were shopping in the Firestone store, and all of a sudden your mom said, 'Look, Joe, look, this is what they're talking about. It's the red scooters.' And I looked, and sure enough, right there was a little row of brand new red scooters waiting for Christmas. And your mama got the saddest look on her face, and she says, 'Joe, they are so big, Santa Claus will never get down the chimney with them.' So, boys, we talked to Santa Claus and told him to bring you anything he wanted to. And we bought the red scooters that very day. We've had them hidden in the trunk of the car. You can go out there and get them now if you want to." Do you know, to this very day, my brother Joe and I still think that was the best Christmas we ever had. Because you know what? At very best, Old Santa Claus only comes through once a year. And we had our mama and daddy, and they tried to come through every single day. Have a wonderful holiday season and tell your own story.